Hello, everyone, and welcome to Revelations with Rowena. I feel like that was a little like spicy jazz version, a little pitta version, if you will. We'll talk about that. But I'm really excited to have Nicole with me today to talk us through the Ayurvedic method. I'm going to let her explain it, but she's going to talk about her journey and what brought her to do this amazing work that, as I mentioned before we went live, I have very surface level, minimal, knowledge about it. So I'm very excited to learn more and to have her share her wealth of expertise with the community. So thank you so much, Nicole, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Rowena.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, so I am a wellness coach and I'm an Ayurvedic health advisor. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Ayurveda, it is the world's oldest holistic healing system. It comes from India and it's considered the sister science to yoga. And it's really starting to see an emergence here in the West because they are finding, that it's really helpful with a lot of these diseases and disorders that sort of have modern medicine, Western medicine scratching their heads in terms of how to help, how to treat, how to cure. And I have a personal story with this. This is how I came to Ayurveda. So let's see, I think it was around 2013, 2014, I got diagnosed with IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. And it took a while to even get that diagnosis. They ran a billion tests on me, kept telling me everything was fine. But I was still, I was not fine. I was having pretty debilitating episodes that were causing me to cancel flights, trips that I had,
Wow.
missing graduations. It was really bad. It was incredibly disruptive to my life. And so when the doctor finally gave me this diagnosis and told me it's not curable and we really don't know how to treat it, I was really frustrated. And he offered a diet which I tried, and it did not help. In fact, for some reason, it seemed to make things worse for me.
Oh, no.
So I was really just upset. Like I didn't want, I was going to have this for the rest of my life, and I didn't know how I was going to deal with this. And I remembered a yoga teacher that I had telling me about Ayurveda. And I happened to live at the time near a school of Ayurveda. So I went to that school of Ayurveda. They had like a low cost clinic and gave them all of my information, told them what was going on with me. And they gave me all of these recommendations. And I started doing some of them and noticed that my episodes were, getting a little bit easier to handle, and just kept bringing more things in, learning more about it. And I was like, but there's something to this. And then I finally got serious and started working with a practitioner. I worked with her for about a year, maybe close to 2 year and a half. And I am now 5 years without an IBS episode.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And what was really cool is even though I turned to Ayurveda for those digestive issues, I got healing for so many other things that I didn't even know I could get healing for. So I had seasonal allergies all of my life. I don't have them anymore. I had a really bad skin rash, especially at the height of my IBS, that one doctor told me I had because I was getting old and my oil glands weren't working anymore. But I don't have that rash anymore. And probably one of the biggest things, aside from the help with the digestive issues, is that I had hormonal imbalance issues from the time I was a teenager, that would, put me into cyclical depression. And I don't deal with that anymore either. So it was just a huge game changer for me adopting this Ayurvedic lifestyle. And at the time, I was working as a litigation consultant, and realized, I can't even do this work anymore. I want to share Ayurveda with other people. So I got trained in Ayurveda with my practitioner, and so yeah, so now I'm sharing the wonders of Ayurveda with other people.
Wow, what an amazing story that through your own journey and your own healing, you're now taking it upon yourself to use this practice to help other people.
Yeah.
If it's okay, could we actually back up a little bit? And can you just explain for folks who may not even know what Ayurveda is? Could you explain what that is and what that entails and how that could be tied to all of these
Yeah.
health
Yeah.
issues? Yeah.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, Ayurveda is a holistic healing system. So it doesn't look at, here in Western medicine, if there's something wrong with your digestive system, you go to the gastroenterologist. And then
Mhm.
if something's wrong with your skin, you go to the dermatologist. But when you're working with a holistic system, it's looking for the root cause. And that's why I
Mm.
was getting healing for all of those things, not just what was going on with my digestion. And so Ayurveda looks at the whole system, what you're doing, how you're living, what you do for a living, how you're feeling, what's going on with you emotionally. It just looks at every aspect of your life. And in particular, Ayurvedic's approach is constitutional. So it looks at people, every person has a very unique constitution.
Mm.
And your constitution is made up of three doshas: vata, kapha, and pitta. And so the doshas are like these, they're energies. They are throughout nature. And a lot of times people think that they are mind body types, but they're in everything.
Mm.
And so the way it works is we all have all three of these doshas, but we have them in different proportions. And depending on what that proportion is, you are going to want to treat something differently. So let's say, you were mentioning earlier that you are pitta dominant. And
Mhm.
so if you had a headache and I had a headache and I'm more vata dominant, we would treat that differently
Oh, wow.
because, yeah. And so we really like to figure out what's going on with this person. So we have these doshas in particular proportions. When we experience a symptom, it's because one of those proportions has gone out of balance.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think it's fascinating that there's, an imbalance, and then what you mentioned, depending on what your dominant dosha is, it
Right.
impacts
So,
the treatment or what next steps you would take.
right, right. So remind me, what were your proportions again?
Yeah, so let me pull it up again. Yes, I am 50 pitta,
Uh-huh.
30 kapha, and 20 vata.
Okay. So let's just say you were doing something that took vata out of balance. And so
Okay.
all of a sudden you're now 30% vata and 40% pitta. And what was the other percentage of kapha?
It was 30.
30. Yeah.
Mhm,
So now both your vata and your pitta are off, right? Once you go
mhm,
out of balance, you're going to start to experience symptoms.
mhm,
So, for instance, if you've got a vata imbalance and a pitta imbalance, you may be experiencing a lot of anxiety. You may be experiencing anger. It can
mm,
show up in digestion as maybe experiencing some gas and bloating, or maybe a lot of acidity. And so, what we would do is adjust your diet and maybe some of the things you're doing in your life, like some lifestyle changes to help bring that back into balance so that you're 50, 30, 20 again.
mhm, mm. And how I believe when I originally found my makeup and my percentages, it was through an assessment. Are there other tools to get a sense of where your baseline is or your level? I don't even know. Is levels the right word or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your constitution is
a
how we
constitution?
talk
Yeah, yeah.
about it. Yeah. So, the quizzes are a great way to get started, to have a
Mhm.
general understanding. The only problem with quizzes is that sometimes if we're imbalanced, we're going to be answering those questions from an imbalanced point of view.
That's right.
And so when I do consultations, I don't even give people a dosha quiz. I really just like to understand what their symptoms are because just from
Mm.
knowing what they're experiencing, I can tell what dosha is out of balance.
Mhm, mhm. And is it a set of questions that you use for every consultation, or does it just kind of come through as you work with the client?
Yeah, so for like a full-on consultation, I have a
Mhm.
set of questions that I
Mhm.
work with. But as they go through those questions, we go through them together, and other things may come up that may
Mhm.
not be on the questionnaire. But yeah, just things that sort of help me get a sense of what's out of balance and why it's out of balance.
So when something is out of balance, you mentioned, in my example of things getting off track, lifestyle changes. Are there other ways that you've recommended to folks to get back to their constitution?
Yeah, the main thing is food and lifestyle changes.
Okay.
There's a lot of different healing modalities within Ayurveda
Mm.
from, if it's something really serious, you may do a panchakarma treatment, which is it's a really intense detox, as well as several other processes that you go through to really just purify the body. Um, but there's herbal protocols. There's color therapy, there's gem therapy. Yoga is I in all of my consultations, I also recommend, yoga, even if it's just very simple poses that you hold.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Pranayama or breath work is another part of the healing modality. So, yeah, there's a wide variety, but really, I find that food and lifestyle are the main culprits if somebody is out of balance, because there's so much in our culture to take us out of balance in terms of food and lifestyle.
Yes, yes, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it doesn't it use a lot of Chinese medicine, hot foods versus cold foods, or is it something different when it comes to
Yeah.
food recommendations?
So my understanding is that Ayurveda was first, and that traditional Chinese medicine
Okay.
came from Ayurveda, because
Okay,
they
okay.
both have that constitutional approach.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right in that. So the doshas are all made of two elements
Mhm.
each. So Pitta dosha is mainly fire, but it's got a little bit of water. Vata is air and ether, and Kapha is water and earth. And so each of these elements have different qualities. For instance, Pitta, fire, is obviously going to be very hot. So if Pitta is out of balance, we're going to bring in cooling foods to bring it
Mhm.
back into balance. So there's this idea that opposites bring balance. That's a really important concept in Ayurveda. So, and that helps us understand, once we get to know our constitution and understand what it is. So, for instance, for me, I'm Vata dominant. So, if Vata goes out of balance for me,
Mhm.
I need to bring more warm things in, because Vata has the
Mm.
quality of being cool. And that's what I love about Ayurveda, is that once you have some understanding of this, you can bring healing into your life pretty easily. If I have a headache, I know what I need to do. If my bowels are not working well, I know what I need to do to bring myself back into balance. And I love that. It's not about, just taking a pill and hoping it goes
Yeah.
away and not understanding why it happened, but really understanding what action I took that caused that imbalance and correcting that imbalance.
That's amazing. Such an empowering way for
Totally.
us to feel that we have this awareness of our bodies and to be able to help put it back into balance, like you said, in these more holistic ways versus
Yeah.
reaching for, the medicine cabinet or going to the pharmacy. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really powerful change for me, and,
Mhm.
and to real it was powerful, but it was also kind of hard, because I
Mhm.
realized I had to really take responsibility for what I was doing. And it's so easy to just go to the doctor and say, "What am I supposed to do?" You kind of just surrender all of this authority over yourself to somebody who doesn't really know much about your life. So it's empowering in that sense that, like, oh, I get to decide. I understand my body. I know what my body needs. And that's not to say that there's anything that Western medicine is horrible. Western medicine has done
Right.
amazing things, but there is this approach that that we don't know what's best for ourselves, and that's where I think Western medicine can really get it wrong.
Yeah, no, that was such a good point, that the first one you brought up about we pretty much turn over or surrender to medical professionals without really knowing or having a sense of what's going on and what our bodies are.
Yeah.
I love that that one of the first things you said was, working. I might phrase this incorrectly, but working alongside or in conjunction with yoga and like yoga practice. So you mentioned, another way to bring folks back into balance, into their constitution, is through yoga. Are there specific poses to get you back into balance, or is it just very basic? As a yoga practitioner, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So for someone who, for instance, has a lot of pitta that's out of balance, you're going to want to do a slower yoga, like more like hatha
Mhm.
yoga rather than vinyasa, because you're trying to cool the body down and calm down. And if you're doing vinyasa, you're really firing up the body. Um, and with Vata dosha, like again, you need something really slow. You may even want to do a lot of grounding poses
Mm.
because Vata is has made of the elements of air and ether. It's sometimes called the windy dosha. So it's like when you're feeling scattered and all over the place,
Mm.
you need to ground. So you want to do the more seated poses. And if you're Kapha, it's made of earth and water. So those are the heavier elements. And sometimes if kapha is out of balance, we're feeling really sluggish. So that's when you want to do that vinyasa practice. You want to heat up the body and get moving.
Ooh, I love that. I love that as a way, based on where you're at, how you're feeling physically, emotionally, mentally,
Yeah.
to be able to personalize or to have a yoga
Yeah.
practice that really fits the vibe. That's so interesting, because I don't know, I can't speak for others, but I know for me it's just, well, what video's there today, or what class?
Right.
Oh,
Right. Right.
vinyasa, okay. But I love this, and I know for me, as pitta, once I start when I first started practicing yoga, it was definitely more the vinyasa, because I think that's what's popular, right?
Right. Yeah.
Muscle through it. But when I discovered things like yin yoga, and yeah, being able to
Yeah.
slow down and ground, it was so, so transformative. So I think that's
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something very common with pitta, especially if pitta is out of balance, is we just want to push through it and like make it all happen and without tuning into what the body needs in that
Mm,
moment.
mm, mm. So are there, working with your clients, are there Mm, ways that we can check in with ourselves, or tips, right? So once we figure out our condition, or what we have is, what our
Your
different
constitution.
constitution,
Yeah.
um, you know, are there ways, or are there indicators that may come up, or red flags? I don't know if that's the right words to use, but that kind of tip us off, like, ooh, you might be, out of.
Yeah. Well, anytime you're experiencing a symptom or feeling out of
Mm,
balance, whether that's a physical symptom, emotional, or mental, something's out of balance. And so it does take a little bit of practice understanding what this imbalance looks like and what it needs to be brought back into balance.
mhm.
But for example, heartburn, right? You can tell just from the sound of it, heartburn, it's fire, and it needs
Yeah.
something cool and calming to bring that pitta dosha, that fiery dosha, back into balance. So
Mm.
that's just a really simple example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, as I mentioned earlier with Vata, if you have a Vata imbalance, you may be feeling very scattered or anxious because it's the windy dosha. Your skin may feel really dry. These
Mm.
are all signs that Vata is out of balance, and you want to bring things that are more warming or grounding in.
Okay, so it's one thing to have our own self-awareness. Do you speak with clients about, in relationship with other people, family, children, you know what I mean? So how can we bring these practices into our homes? At the time of recording this, we're still not out of the woods in terms of
Right.
COVID-19. We're spending a lot of time together. Um, you know, I I don't know if folks notice, I'm in a different space because I have a sick kiddo this week. And so we had to rearrange, where I usually record these live sessions. So, yeah, just what are your thoughts on that? Or do you talk with?
Yeah. So do you mean in terms of interrelationship stuff, or are you talking about how do you bring balance to a whole family when we all have different
Ooh,
constitutions?
I was originally speaking to in a relationship, but I mean, if you have anything to say about a family dynamic, I think that would be interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, so it is really helpful to understand your partners, even your friends, whoever you're spending a lot of time with, understanding their constitutions.
Mhm.
For instance, I had a friend who he moved much slower than I did. He did things much more meticulously, and it drove me nuts. But that's because I'm Vata and he's Kapha. He's much more grounded. He's going to take his
Mm.
time. He's going to make sure he's doing it well. He's going to understand it well. Whereas, my Vata constitution is like, let's just fix it and go. Like, let's just, get it over with. So it's actually really powerful once you start to understand that. That's another
Mm.
way to bring yourself back into balance. If you know you're feeling scattered and you've got a Kapha friend, call them up. They're
Yeah.
going to help you just come back to earth. And so, yeah, and understanding that rather than getting frustrated with them for having that characteristic and actually seeing how helpful it can be to you and
Mhm.
even how you can support them and let them shine. Like if there is, if I've got a project that I just need somebody to really power through it and get done, I'm going to find someone who's got a Pitta constitution.
Yes.
If I have a long research project that's going to take some time and needs to be done very meticulously, I'm going to call out to someone who's got more kapha.
I love that in regards to project management and personality. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, I think that's
Yeah,
great insight to have to know what your constitution is and who can you bring onto your team to be able to have a nice balance. And if,
right.
I think that's really, really helpful insight and information. I know for me, I use astrology, right? I'm a practicing astrologer and human design as well. So
All
similarly,
right.
knowing these are all tools, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
know ourselves and to know the folks that we spend a lot of time with to give us insight on why people may be the way that they are. And that's okay, that we're all made up differently and nobody's right or wrong. And we're just all here coexisting.
right, right. Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about Ayurveda too, and this constitutional approach is we don't feel so bad about our bodies anymore. Like,
Mm.
there's an ideal of how we're supposed to look and be, but Ayurveda is like, no, we're all supposed to be different, and it's beautiful. So I love that it appreciates the uniqueness of all of us.
I love that. Again, just gonna reiterate the empowerment piece, for
Yeah,
me as someone that works with women, and to empower them and to find their authenticity and be unapologetic. What another amazing tool to be like, yeah, we're all unique and this is how my body's made up and this is what I should be eating or this is how
right,
this
right.
practices. I think that's just lovely because I feel I agree, and especially as women, that we're conditioned and we see these, we see the media and everything, and we're made to feel like we have to look a certain way or our body's supposed to
Right.
be made up a certain way, but that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to get really deep from a philosophical point of view, Ayurveda tells us that we have the most perfect constitution that we need to carry out our dharma in this life.
Mm.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
really
yes.
leaning into that and understanding yourself helps you understand how to fulfill your purpose in life.
Oh, I love that, Nicole. Okay, well, speaking of Dharma, tell folks about yours and what you're doing and how you incorporate. We mentioned your consultations, but give us the rundown. What are you doing with this work now that you've experienced it personally and you've studied it?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one consultations, as I
Mhm.
mentioned, really just help people get a better understanding of what is going to bring them into balance.
Mm.
I also do online courses. So I've got a longer course, Thrive and Shine, which is all about embracing the Ayurvedic lifestyle and habits. And so it's Ayurveda, but it's also a lot about habit change, because that's the hard part, right? We can tell people all day long what they need to do, but it's really about embracing those changes
Mhm.
and making them sustainable for your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Um, and then right now, I'm actually starting an Ayurvedic detox at the end of this month. So it's a really great way to get an introduction into Ayurveda. It is, most people hear the word detox and they're like, oh no. But what I love about the Ayurvedic detox is you have 3 nourishing meals a day.
Oh.
And it's just a really nice way to cleanse the body, cleanse the mind, and a detox to me isn't about like losing weight or like doing something drastic. It's an opportunity to look at our patterns and see, okay, do I want to keep this pattern that I'm doing, or can I shift into some other way? And when we take that
Mm.
break from being on autopilot during a detox, we really get that opportunity to reflect and move forward more consciously.
Ooh, yes. I love consciously, intentionally, mindfully.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That sounds amazing. So we'll definitely, put your information in the show notes. But for now, what is your website? Where can people find you?
Yeah. So my website is nmyogawellness.com, and you'll find the detox on there if you're interested. It's a great price, and I'm offering all of your listeners 10% off with the code LIVE10. So LIVE10. And you can find me on Instagram at nmyogawellness.
Yeah, we see it right here on your display and your name. So that's fantastic. At Live 10. So is that case sensitive? The
It
copyright.
is. Yes.
Okay.
Uppercase.
All
Thank you.
caps?
All caps.
All caps. Live 10. All right. We'll be sure to share that information. That it sounds amazing. We'll let folks know there. And I just want to thank you, Nicole, so much for being here, for sharing your story and your wealth of knowledge about Ayurveda and just how much of a transformational journey it can be for us if we just
Yeah.
learn more about ourselves in this sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about Ayurveda and just sharing it with people.
Lovely. Well, you heard it here, folks. I will be sure to put all that information so that you could get that awesome discount. Thank you again, Nicole.
Thank
And
you.
you could learn more about Ayurveda. So, next time, we are actually going to have a bit of a time and day change. I will be traveling, going to a wedding next week. Yay, traveling again. So, with that, next week, we're going to be here at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, March 22nd, where I'll be talking with Yvonne Dam, who is a performance coach and owner. She's going to talk about how to go from being a drained workaholic to being CEO of your life. So, speaking, I think this really ties in, right? Speaking about
Yeah,
being out of alignment and, not following your dharma and just being overworked and not in the right place. Yvonne,
yeah.
yeah, we'll talk all about that and how she made that transformation of, wait, what am I doing? I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah.
You said you were doing litigation, right, Nicole? Litigation
Yeah.
consulting. So I'm sure it was a similar hustle and grind.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be here next Tuesday, not Thursday. So still, I guess, a day of the week begins with T. But until then, take care of each other. Learn more from Nicole. Follow her on social media, and hope that you'll take her up on that detox. I think it'll be a great way to get some nourishing foods. As a foodie, I'm definitely here for it, and to be able to feel well and to feel complete and aligned and just feeling good in our bodies, and again not having to surrender to other external means, and just really knowing
Yes.
ourselves, I think, is powerful. So
Yeah.
until then, thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole, and we
Thank
will
you.
see you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.